So welcome to the Unlocking the Power of Your Team webinar, which we are delivering in partnership with my colleagues from Entrepreneurial Scotland. My name's Heather Milne. I'm a Growth and Inward Investment Manager at Skills Development Scotland, and very, very delighted to welcome our guest speakers from Entrepreneurial Scotland onto the session today, who I'll pass on to shortly. I'll just quickly run through some housekeeping in the first instance. We're recording this webinar and it will be hosted on our website, so you'll be able to access it in the future if you need to. And also, to avoid any accidental interruptions, attendee cameras and microphones have been switched off. However, we would really like to encourage you to use the Q&A function to ask any questions you might have. Now, this is different to the normal chat function, but if you look at the top of your Teams screen, you should be able to see the Q&A button with speech bubbles with a question mark in it, and you can post any questions that you may have for any of the panel in there. Session is due to run for 45 minutes, and we've dedicated some of that time at the end of the presentations to answer your questions. We'll be monitoring the Q&A session as we go to ensure that as many of your questions as possible are covered. The resources, the copy of the presentation will be shared to you as well. So with no further ado, I'd now like to pass you on to Jules Lancastle, who will be your facilitator for the day. Thank you, Jules.
For the day, Heather? I think we're all hoping it's just 45 minutes.
Did I say the day? Well, you know, we're getting our money's worth.
Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this lunchtime for our brief webinar on the topic of unlocking the power of your team. So let me just make sure that we've got the right screen up. Hopefully you can see the presentation in its embryonic state. I can see a nodding head from Heather, so that's reassuring. As Heather said, my name's Jules Lancastle. I work with Entrepreneurial Scotland, and I like to challenge restless minds. I have a firm belief that leaders like you have the mindset, and you guys are the ones that fuel growth and prosperity for everybody in Scotland because of your impact on the communities that you serve. And for this reason, I work with Entrepreneurial Scotland, because I share their belief that an entrepreneurial Scotland is a prosperous one. So I'm delighted that we are working with SDS to deliver the second of 3 webinars. We looked at the entrepreneurial mindset in our previous webinar, and in a week's time we will be looking at a final webinar that looks at the value entrepreneurial leaders place on building connections outside of their own business to create values for themselves and others. But we're starting today by looking at the power that you can unlock within your team internally. So before we get into this, to unlock the power of any team, first of all, we need to know that we've got a strong foundation to build on. High-performing, opportunity-driven individuals that you recruit or you nurture within your organisation are clearly going to become part of your powerful team if they operate within a framework of values and behaviours that fundamentally you create. So it's worth considering that the top talent, the people who present themselves to you for selection to join your organisation, do so based on what they know about your organisation, what you've shared with them, perhaps through your promotional material, but also what they've read about you online, through social media, through referrals they may have had through word of mouth, through articles that they've read and so on. So once you've got your team together, unlocking the potential of the women and the men that you select is a responsibility that in this era is very much shared with the talent themselves. But top talent is up for it. The guys that are, really into working in those high-paced environments, they are driven to unlock their own potential. So they're definitely asking themselves, what evidence is there that this company's culture is a good fit for me? Because I'm fully motivated to be the best I can be. So what's this company offering me? So before we get into the kind of detail of the webinar, just kind of have a little check-in with yourself to ask about your own culture, your own organisation. How innovative is your organisation? How effectively are you able to seek creative solutions to the challenges that you face? How experimental are you able to be within your organisation? Able to evaluate concepts and ideas internally through experimentation without necessarily that high cost of paying for someone else's experience to try things out in a different environment to your own. Within the culture of your organisation, are you empowering your people? Are you reaping the reward that you get from a confident, motivated workforce that is adaptable and resourceful because they feel empowered? And fundamentally, are you able to surface different perspectives? Have you got diverse, disparate ideas from a broad contribution base? Or do you sometimes feel you perhaps get stuck in a rut? If you kind of reflect on some of these things and you think, okay, there's a lot of it that I like, I'm good, I feel good about this, but maybe there's room for improvement, it's worth considering how much has changed in your organisation since it started or since you did the last real check-in. Maybe it's time to check in again, because just like exercising and eating well every day leads to good health, consistently nourishing and investing in your people leads to continued good culture. And it is that consistency that's key. You can't take your eye off the ball on this one. Market opportunities change, companies pivot, employees and leadership teams come and go. And throughout it all, the successful businesses are the ones that keep their focus on culture to unlock the power of their teams. So today, you'll have seen the key takeaways that we are hoping to pick up on. So let's get into the kind of detail of our conversation today. And we're going to start by talking about that culture. We've all heard how culture is everything. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's as relevant today as it was before. But where do you start when you realise there's room for improvement? Well, this is a simple 5-point checklist that just gets you, it gives you something to use as an easy VoxPox questionnaire with your leadership team, with your own employees. But I'm going to encourage you to think about the extent you might use this with prospective new employees, with new hires, etc. It's a great litmus test for your own intentionality and consistency. Are you building the right culture and environment for high performance opportunity-driven teams? So number one, do you have a short and easy to understand core purpose? Do you really? Can you express it in a simple sentence? And have you revisited it recently to check in with its relevance? The meaning of words evolve, means to ends change. Is your purpose as crystal clear today as it was when you perhaps first set it up? Number two, can every team member recite that purpose? And this doesn't mean, at induction, everyone was told the purpose and now it's a test of can they remember it. Is the core purpose regularly referenced in the activities that you undertake within your organisation, in the communication that you put out, etc.? Do people talk about it in their own presentations and meetings and discussions? And when you interview and you get new people through the door, do they seem to have an awareness of it and an enthusiasm for it? Number three, have you turned that core purpose into just 3 to 5 core values? This is about making your purpose accessible to all. They need to be simple and simple to express and memorable. So if you've got 3 to 5 core values, how do you then use them? And in this quick checklist, 4 and 5, do you use those core values as a platform for recognition and reward? How do you define values-based performance and make sure that actually it's the values that are being recognized, not just the bottom line impact, perhaps? How do you elevate value champions in the workplace to ensure that you're getting that balance of recognition across your organization? And number 5, how do you link values to performance and personal development plans in whatever form you have them, so that an individual's behavior is directly linked to the outcomes that you seek in the organization? So That's a quick and easy checklist, and much of the next couple of slides is going to highlight ways of making that entrepreneurial culture more visible in your workplace, how you actually bake this in, because it's all well and fair having core purpose and values, but it's what you do with them and how visible you are in doing it that really makes a difference. So first up, making this visible at all levels across an organization is crucial. Famously, we all have heard about the janitor that worked for NASA, who, when asked what he was actually doing in the organization, his perception and his absolute understanding of what he's there to do is he's helping put a man on the moon. Across the organization, that's where it actually counts. Promoting best practice is essential. So not just talking about what you want to happen in the future, but showing when and where you've got what you wanted. Promoting or broadcasting examples of positive mindset and proactive problem solving. Sharing examples is super important, and that includes amplifying the third-party affirmations that you get about your culture, not just for your clients. This isn't about getting your next piece of business. This is about enabling your team to hear for themselves the power of your values, the power of your culture, and the impact that it has on the stakeholders of your organization. And all this means that you need to create an environment for idea sharing and new initiatives to flourish. There has to be intentionality behind it, because you provide the framework. I excuse the cheesy analogy, but I do feel it's a bit like a game of rugby. You create the laws of the game. You ensure the referee is there for the 80 minutes of the game so that they can course correct and they can deliver set pieces. But actually, once you've created that framework, you've created that environment, you can let the champagne rugby flow. The creativity of the players can really start to flourish. So providing opportunities for employees to connect and share ideas and initiative help you get there. So baking all of this into the way that you roll in your organization. Here's some of the things that you may already have in your organization or may be considering. How you use that intentionality to actually ensure the environment that your top talent is working within can constantly perform at its highest level. So brainstorming sessions, the co-design projects, participating in decision making, open communication platforms. We're going to dig into some of this a little bit more as we look at how you transition from hiring that top talent that's going to drive your organization forward to actually maintaining and nurturing that top talent as they go through their journey with you. So let's look at some smart strategies for hiring, managing and retaining that top talent that really is your dream team. So assuming your player selection has been strong, let's look at how you fuel their creativity. I think, first of all, it starts with making sure that you've got the right people in the room, and getting it right is worth investing time in. Keeping that rugby analogy, you want a clean ball thrown in, not something that's bobbling around and could end up anywhere. But that means that you have practiced, you have been very clear and intentional about how you are introducing your new hires into your organization. So with this one, when you are recruiting people into your organization, consider the torchbearers that you are using to promote the opportunities that you have. Consider using the rising stars that are already in your own organization that are demonstrating the values, the creativity, the mindset that you want your next people to actually emulate. Use entrepreneurial talent to get entrepreneurial talent, and structure your interview process so that you are asking people to express how and when they have taken initiative and innovated to solve problems. As a slight side note, Entrepreneurial Scotland delivers the Saltire Scholar Programme, where we interview people on these characteristics. We ask them for examples of when they've used their initiative and when they've innovated to solve problems, so that we've got a pool of candidates that are ready and primed to join organisations like yours and bring their new thinking, new entrepreneurial talent into organisations. So be intentional throughout the hiring process, but but also make employees feel like equal business partners. Think about how this starts to get embedded during the interview process, but also what it feels like when a new hire comes into your organization. How they feel valued and respected becomes a significant factor in how much they feel invested in the company's growth. So is everyone treated as an equal stakeholder in the future, in the fortune decision making of the organization, or are some voices heard more than others and some perhaps overlooked? How are you managing expectations through the onboarding process? How are you building confidence, driving innovation through empowering and encouraging conversations? The top tip here is to set an absolute expectation that asking questions is good. There's no such thing as a bad question. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Encourages the next person to ask the question and the next one, but also that classic improv tool, that there's no such thing as a bad idea. So any idea that's put forward, rather than no but or yes but, it's a yes and we can also build on that. And that opens creativity. And if you can incorporate that into your recruitment and onboarding process, you are already setting the tone for the organization that you want to be driving forward. So just on that last one, beware of the expectation gap. You cannot often have a really valued recruitment and onboarding experience where the expectations of the individual are strongly set that they are a part of this entrepreneurial culture. So this is where the wheels come off if the culture has not been embedded across the organization, as an expectation gap develops when that onboarding experience ends and the individuals become a more integral part of the organization, and suddenly they're not asked questions so often. They're not being invited to use their voice so often. So be aware of the expectation gap through the recruitment process. And also think about how you are automatically creating a safe environment for micro failures. Think about how you can showcase those happy little accidents that have maybe led to new success. Showcase when things perhaps haven't gone completely to plan, but have pushed boundaries. And be visible in your expression of this. Think about how throughout the process of bringing people into your organization, are you sharing a picture of perfection, or are you actually sharing a picture of experimentation, incremental or partial success that leads towards goal accomplishment? And bear in mind that you set the tone. You very much set the tone as the leader. Some of you might recognize this very recent quote just in the last month, as SpaceX launched again into space. They identified their outcome as a partial success. They completely lost their main rocket because it disintegrated. They lost it, and you saw it reintegrate into Earth's atmosphere to great fireworks coming down on the Gulf of Mexico. But they had the chopsticks recapture of the booster again. And Musk was very quick to come out and say success is uncertain, but entertainment is guaranteed. He sets the tone for an organization that is full to the brim of people who share his hyper focus on growth and success in that organization, and they want to contribute to where it can go. So next up, as we've got people in our organization, so we want to fuel innovation and collaboration. And we also want to kind of develop this sense of accountability within our teams. It's worth looking at recognizing and rewarding our values champions. How many of us in our organizations are quick to find the reward and recognition within the sales team, within budgets that are met and financial indicators, but perhaps find it more difficult to recognize and reward value champions? So I always compare this a little bit to Olympic champions, who are so fantastic at sharing the values of faster, fitter, higher, but also beyond that, they share the Olympic values of what it is to actually fulfill the Olympic ideals. So when you run a 100-meter race, you don't wait until the team meeting 4 weeks later to actually get your reward for having been the person who's taken responsibility to represent their nation and participate and drive things forward. No, there and then they get their recognition. And the recognition isn't massive. An Olympic champion gets a bunch of flowers and a wee medal, a tin medal. But in the moment, having that recognition amongst their peers, having that opportunity to lift this person and show what good looks like, that's a really, really valuable part, because it inspires the rest of us to say, oh, I wonder if one day could I be the next Olympic champion, or certainly perhaps the next generation. I think my chances are long gone. But how you reward individuals is super important. Microaffirmations matter. Feedback matters, but recognize that our teams are full of individual humans, and we are unlocking the potential of individual human beings. So the way that we tailor recognition and reward to individuals really makes a difference. It doesn't need to be enormous, but it does need to be something that connects with that individual and inspires them to push forward. Next up, give employees a voice. You've hand selected the best talent, the top talent that you want in your organization, because you've heard something from them that you thought, yep, I like what I'm hearing. So now you need to make sure their voice is heard across the organization, facilitate their voice being heard among their peers, and actually find ways for strong voices to be heard in unlikely parts of your organization as well, because that cross-pollination of ideas, that collaboration, that engagement in teams that have mixed backgrounds, mixed departments, mixed knowledge bases is really where some of the creativity comes. Make sure that you're requesting recommendations from your team rather than just asking for feedback on what you've already done. You know, make sure that they are a part of the decision-making process. And when you have examples of actions that the organization has taken based on some wonderful little insight that's come from the organization, acknowledge it. Acknowledge that it's been worthwhile getting an employee getting their voice into the mix. On this one, I'm going to just highlight that the world has moved on, you know, at such a pace. And if you're not already using some form of AI-enabled digital platform, it needs serious consideration, because it is transforming the way that employee groups can tap into shared interests, or not necessarily shared thinking, but shared noodling. You know, they're thinking about the same challenges and perhaps coming at them from different directions. And an AI-enabled platform, employee platform, is really a game changer for giving employees a voice. And the last point here is provide focus for learning and collaboration. Your top talent wants to learn, and they want to showcase their knowledge and apply it in the situations that they find themselves through their workplace. So demonstrate trust by engaging all employees in discussions about company progress, new ideas and goals. Meet regularly and engage the workforce at large in these ideas of where the organization's going. Facilitate visibly the consideration of the ideas that come in, so that everybody feels there's a return on investment for putting their ideas into the pot. And really do, you know, acknowledge you don't have all the answers, and nor should you. And this address this temptation to micromanage, and instead favour ownership and autonomy, so that employees can have much more liberation, if you like, to focus their learning, their collaborative activities in the directions that they've unearthed, based on an understanding and an insight into where you are taking the organization, getting it to go. So definitely provide ample professional growth opportunities. So we've talked about how we fuel the people who are in our organizations and really enable them to be connected and to be a part of the continuation of growth within the organization. Let's talk about some of the leadership tactics. Obviously, you work within leadership teams, ideally, and it's important that obviously the responsibility for embedding entrepreneurial mindset and sustaining high performance is shared across the organization. But make no mistake that your role as a leader is a key one. And particularly at our size of businesses, we're very visible as leaders, and our role is that of a linchpin, and we need to be conscious and intentional in the tactics that we deploy to really unlock the power of our teams. So clearly, culture is everything. We started there. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, he references the start with your circle of influence. That small change in the right environment, with the right purpose and targets, it's what has a ripple effect that leads to the massive change. So if you're thinking you need to modify or evolve culture within your organization, don't eat the elephant in one bite. Start with a small mouthful to start with, and start in your sphere, your circle of influence. Focus on the critical few. Identify those people within the organization who are absolute exemplars of the values of your organization. Their behaviors and their actions, time and again, demonstrate a pathway towards the goal that you are seeking to achieve. So focus on the critical few, because their light will illuminate the path for all. And frankly, your focus on them will the people who are not on the same page start to disappear into the darkness. Similarly, when you're looking at what's happening in your organization that's working well for you versus what's not working so well, focus on the bright spots and focus more on what's working for you rather than fixing what's not. So the final thing that I want to do here, because I'm conscious that I want us to have time to talk to Kane Taylor, our guest today, is simply to give you a bit of a practical checklist of things that you can work through in terms of some of the tactics that you can embed to really encourage entrepreneurial mindset and sustain high performance. And this is a lot of this is a focus on you now. So lead by example. Again, I say you set the tone. You need to model the behaviors. Be vulnerable. Demonstrate. Don't be afraid to let people know around you when things haven't gone quite to plan. Because if they're demonstrating that you have been pushing the boundaries, then that's fantastic modeling of behaviors. But equally, you're setting expectations. It's not, try everything. It's not play fast and loose. It's safe risk taking. It's occasional missteps, etc. But demonstrate that hyper focus on progress. But make it quite transparent. What do you do in your organization that gives anyone in your team access to you? Do you have open door office hours, ask me anything moments? How accessible are you and your thoughts and ideas? But flip that the other way. How much access do you have to the thoughts and ideas of that wonderful resource of people that you've recruited into your organization? So lead by example. Encourage autonomy. So I mentioned micromanagement earlier, the death of creativity and innovation. So give responsibility and embrace the diverse perspectives. The diverse perspectives come from some of the structure that you put in place that enable, like skunk work projects, little projects that allow for a startup mentality to evolve within a small project team that is deliberately taken from different parts of the organization, so as that people feel completely autonomous and feel that they are able to really stretch the boundaries to explore new ideas. How often are you able to create environments where people can cut their teeth on some of these activities so that they can actually feel more and more comfortable with risk-taking, support people in their risk-taking. And finally, embrace technology. I'm coming back to this. I think it's impossible not to acknowledge that the digital transformation and the adoption of different tools and AI within our organizations is a game changer, but particularly in the space around conversations and connectivity between teams and work colleagues who geography might mean that they are quite separate, But actually, technology enables this conversation, and with AI insights, it also enables those conversations to set the agenda for where you perhaps go to continue to encourage that entrepreneurial mindset and drive high performance. So I hope that there's enough in there to give you a mix of ideas to think about and consider, and perhaps a few practical ideas for things that you can embed in your own organisation. But I wanted to use time as well to have a conversation with our guest, Kane Taylor, who, as I say, I've invited him to come along and chat to us because he has a great story to tell. Everything's relative, and I see him as a young entrepreneurial talent, but his story is one of being that top talent that was recruited into an organisation. So he's able to look at it from the perspective of how he was nurtured, how his ambition and drive was absolutely cradled or not within an organisation, because now he's in a situation where the shoe's on the other foot, and he is in fact now running his own organisation at Ailsa Reliability. So now he's got to be considering the strategy that he puts in play to actually spot and nurture talent coming into his organisation. So there's two sides of the coin, or what are of interest to us here. So before I ask Kane to actually tell us a little bit about himself, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully you can see Kane. Give us a wave, Kane, say hello.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon all, actually. Sorry, it's afternoon now.
Fantastic. So thanks again for joining us from your luxury penthouse with the views over the sea.
Beautiful weather outside all year round.
So, as I say, Kane, obviously, before joining Ailsa Reliability Solutions, you started your career as an electromechanical apprentice at just 16 years old.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think it would be useful for you to share a little bit about your background and your story before we get into some of your thoughts and ideas about how entrepreneurial talent is nurtured within organisations. So, do you want to just give us a little bit of a background?
Definitely. So how do you go from being an apprentice to being a business leader within a business to then having your own business? I suppose there's a lot happening there, and to be honest, it's all in a 10-year period. So I won't bore you all to death. I won't go through slides. We'll just talk the story, and feel free to interrupt me, Jules, at any moment with any questions, and hopefully it can entice some of you guys for some Q&As as well. Feel free to drop some of them in there as we're having a discussion. So yeah, I left school at 16. Didn't know what to do. I knew I didn't want to stay on. I knew I wanted to get involved in engineering, and being from Aberdeen, the accent might give it away. Oil and gas was massive in Aberdeen, so I wanted to get into engineering in Aberdeen. So I ended up studying electrical engineering at college, and the only reason I picked electrical engineering is my physics teacher told me to never become an electrician because I couldn't wire a plug, and I thought, that's a challenge, and I'm going to go and do my electrical NC and see how I get on. And I absolutely loved it. Got on really well with all the courses and the lecturers, and I says, yeah, this is a career for me. So then I had to go and try and find a job. So I went down the apprenticeship route. I had a tour around the workshop. I knew it was for me again because it was electromechanical, big machines, huge cranes, lots of stuff going on, gas axes firing off in the corners. I thought, yeah, this looks really exciting. This isn't just an everyday boring sort of job. This looks very interesting. So managed to secure the job. Unfortunately, some of the previous apprentices within the business had dropped out of their higher education because that was offered to us in the beginning. And I actually had to do a presentation to the senior management team at the time, explaining why I had to think that I could go on and do an HNC and an HND, which was incredibly tough at 18 years old, only been in the company for about a year and a half. But that was unfortunately the culture was in the place at the time. Previous people had maybe sort of let the management down a little bit by they've invested in their people and then they've not really put the effort in themselves. So I made the commitment to the company and says, look, I'll give it 100%. I want this, because if I didn't get this job, I would have stayed and done that anyway. So it's one of the reasons for me joining the company. And I did appreciate they took us on my offer there, and I got my HND in the end, which was fantastic. But when I came out of my apprenticeship, I still had a lot to learn. I almost feel like I hit the first ceiling in my career, where I was now on a very good wage and borderline the same as what all these guys with 40 years experience, some of them had. And I felt like, well, is this it? Is this what all I'm going to be in life? What can I do? All the managers there, like I said, they were there for 10 years plus in those roles. There was no progression. The work was fairly consistent, so there wasn't a massive growth within that business. And my two choices in my head was, do I leave and go somewhere else, or do I try and see if I can do something internally? And just by pure luck and bad luck for Aberdeen, the oil downturn happened, and there was a restructure. A lot of those older guys had left and retired, and a new management came in. And for the first time in over 4 years, that manager sat down with me and everyone within the business and said to us, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What's your personal goals? What's your career goals? Questions that I'd never heard before. And I really took that on board and thought, this is someone who actually cares and will listen to where I want to be. Unfortunately, I didn't know he was going to ask that questions. I thought it was going to be, how's it going? What do you do? So I didn't know what to say. And the best thing I could say is, I want to sit in your seat as the general manager. That's where I see myself in 10 years. Just a really ambitious thing to say. And obviously we both just laughed about it. Here's me just to finish my apprenticeship, just a young engineer, hardly any experience, telling the boss that I'm going to be sitting in his seat in 10 years' time. And the laugh of it is, that boss that I'm told that to is my business partner today, Jamie. And going back, if we had a time machine right now, it's 10 years is where we are today, actually. If we went back in time in a time machine and went into that office where we had that meeting and said, you two will be running a business together and you'll have all 20 plus staff and all this great stuff, we would have probably have laughed at that and said, no way, there's no chance that would happen. Just the amount of things that have changed in that 10 years has been unreal. But there's been a lot of lessons, Jules, as you've mentioned. There's a lot of things that you learn along the way. There's good, there's bad, there's ugly, and there's things that you can do within a business that you can't do within your own without taking more risks. So that there's positive and negatives to both sides. But what Jamie had offered me was some stepping stones in my career. And that was the first time I'd been offered this, because I couldn't go from zero to hero. I couldn't be a young engineer to be a general manager of a multi-million-pound business. I had to have had a mentor there to create some stepping stones to allow me to progress my career from being a young engineer to a more senior supervisor level, to then maybe into more of a management level. And that was key. If Jamie didn't come into that business, I would have either have left much sooner than I did, or I would have been stuck in I wouldn't like to disrespect and say a dead end job, but there was nowhere to go. It was an exciting job, but there was no progression. And I think it's key as a leader that you create these opportunities. And although you can't maybe say, here's this top management job for you, look at the talent you've got there and say to them, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And if they're shown that ambition, that drive, and they've got some of the skills, the ambition and drive is so much more important, because you can teach skills, you can do training courses, you can go to college, you can go to university, you can do graduate things, you can do all sorts of things, but you can't teach a good attitude, a motivated person. And I think that's a massive thing for us, because even in interviews that we have this time, I mean, I've got 3 new starts next week, and every interview we have with someone, we sell them our vision. We say, this is what our business is all about. This is where we want to go. This is how we're going to do it, and this is why we do it. This is what we're all about. And we will judge the candidates based off of how much they buy into that vision. We don't care so much about the skills. The skills need to be there to a certain extent. You're not going to take someone completely unskilled for a job. But if there's maybe 2 candidates and someone's better skilled, but they've maybe not got the right attitude, or they're maybe stuck in the big blue chip world of it's just a job or something like that, and you've maybe got someone a bit more ambitious that's not got the same experience or the same knowledge, that can be taught. You can't teach that. You can't teach that that attitude, can't you?
So Kane, just help me express, how far you've come in your own business. What's the size and scale of the business that you're running now? How long did it take you to get to where you are?
So at the beginning, the business was always designed to be a bigger business further down the line. So it was never to be, let's try and make as much money as possible or anything like that. So there was a huge amount of time in the beginning creating the foundations, because it's a lot easier creating the foundations in the beginning than it is trying to go back 4 years later going, I wish we put this in place, or I wish we had this person in place. Unfortunately, on the downside of this is it costs a lot of money, a heck of a lot of money, employing people that you maybe can't quite afford, or it's just eating into the profitability of the business. But you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to take that risk. I need this person here. They're going to help drive the business. They're going to help take on ownership of certain things, and they'll maybe help us win some contracts. But technically, you could do it all yourself, but you need them there. You need them on the journey as well, because they're hopefully, if you give them that stepping stones and they grow with the business, that might be a really high level person within your business. And you'd rather promote within than take from out, because they know your business. People within your own business, they know what the good, the bad, and the ugly as well. And it's with them progressing, they can also contribute and suggest.
So
things
you
to make
invested
things better.
heavily in the right core team to start with, because you were going to be setting the tone, setting the foundation of a company that you anticipated was going to grow quickly, and is now operating at what level of turnover? What kind of size are you?
So we're just over. It'll be just over 2 million this year, but it's doubling every year. So last year was just under one. I think it was 1.5. The previous year was about 700. So it's about doubling every year.
So it's that strong foundation that you're building on.
Yes, and even having like the accreditations and things in place, like you have to look at who your end customer is going to be, because you can't do the smaller jobs in the beginning. But we always knew that we were going to focus on the blue chip, the big companies, but they expect you to have ISO accreditations and all these other boxes that need to be ticked and all these procedures in place. But if you get them in early, one, the audits are actually a little bit easier, because you're not a huge organization that now has to restructure for these audits. And then two, it shows these businesses that you're keen as well, and that you've got the right values and you're doing all the right things. Because why would a small business have an ISO accreditation? It's some large businesses still don't have them, for example.
So having set the foundation for your for rapid adoption of clients, I just want to take you back again though to the experience you were building on, having been this high performing person in a different setting, in a corporate setting, where you'd clearly responded to the opportunities that were fortuitously put in front of you, but also really responded to the individual leaders who demonstrated that they cared, etc. What at the same time were, as you look back at it, some of the pitfalls that you would perhaps avoid as you are now in the position where you're recruiting others into your organization? If you were faced with an individual like yourself, what would you absolutely put up there as, you need to avoid this happening because this isn't going to bring the best out of the talent that you've got in your own organization?
Yeah, I think the structure needs to be there, and the focus from the business as well. From a previous experience in my last business, was a lot of businesses start doing side jobs and things on the side, and you do need to recruit into those. And I found myself in one of those positions where my business that I was creating and running and building at that previous employer wasn't the main focus of the business. So I found it very difficult to get the buy-in a lot of the time, and I'd end up having to ask for forgiveness rather than permission a lot of the time, because I'm trying to just drive this forward. And I think no matter what you do, you have to make sure that your focus is right. The reason my last business done a lot of the things it was doing, it was more bolt-ons to contracts that they already won. They were looking at the bigger contract, the bigger picture, and these were things on the side. But these things on the side are still a key to the contract and the KPIs, etc. But I think you need to also invest in these areas as well. It's not just this is our main business and that's just a box that needs to be ticked on the side. There's people going to be working in these areas that need the investment and need the motivation. And to be honest, that small thing could actually grow into something bigger than what you think. It could actually become something even bigger than the main business.
And that was very much that pitfall of the expectation gap, whether it's a new hire coming in and then experiencing a different culture within the main part of the business, or it's that situation where, you're given an opportunity that's at the side of the business and then left hung out to dry, or there is no longer that consistency of the intentional culture building that is applied to that part of the business as well. A kind of classic gap, perhaps a bit there.
Exactly.
So, and now that you're in the hot seat, you said you've got 3 new hires coming on now. In terms of getting an understanding of their mindset and whether or not they were going to be the high performance talent that you need to drive your early stage business to the next stage of growth, how were you screening, if you like? How are you interviewing and onboarding them to make sure that they were the right fit for you, bearing in mind that they were also working out if you're the right fit for them?
For us, one of our core values is actually transparency. So one thing we do is be as transparent as with people in interviews as we can, and we expect the same back the same way, because and it's the same with our customers. Everything's transparent. If something goes wrong, if you're honest, it's went wrong, and you've got a solution to fix the problem, the whole picture works, and there isn't really a problem. So when it comes to interviewing, we tell them exactly how everything is. And to be honest, some people that have joined us have taken a step back in salary, for example, and it's not because who would want to take a pay cut in reality. It's the bigger picture. It's understanding that this isn't just today we're talking about. This is the future. This is what we're trying to build. This is where we're going. And although I can't offer you some top level job, because it literally doesn't exist, it will exist if you drive this with us.
Yeah.
These jobs could be created, and you're going to be in a much better position than where they potentially are just now. Because I do feel a lot of people, when we interview them, do feel almost in that ceiling mode, or maybe they're just going in circles a little bit and they're not really getting out the bit, but they've got great attitudes, that they're trying to empower their own businesses and try to do things. But I do feel that there's breaks on a lot of organizations that put restrictions, and then that's when you lose talent. And then fortunately we pick them up, but then so do other companies, and it's making sure the grass is greener on the other end, on the other side. But I think transparency, and having transparency as a core value, really contributes.
And spotting that hunger within them, where perhaps there is that restlessness, that frustration that they've plateaued in one organisation, but there's a great opportunity in yours if you can maintain the culture and maintain the delivery and that intentionality as their journey with you continues. Correct. Well, listen, I'm very conscious of time, Heather. I know we promised 45 and we're just crashing that barrier now. So, Kane, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on what it's like to be on both sides of the coin. I think there's a reinforcement there that, as entrepreneurial leaders, we need to be showing the stepping stones for our entrepreneurial talent, and actually not be afraid to show really ambitious growth and development. There's a long journey that people can come on with us, but it means that we need to keep our eye on the ball and maintain that intentionality in all parts of our business as it grows and develops. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Kane. Heather, that is it from us, I think. So I'm going to hand back over to you for any closing remarks, and then let everyone get away for the lunch.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jules, and thanks, Kane. A really interesting session, and I'm sure that everyone has attended will have taken some really inspirational thoughts away from that. So thank you, very much appreciated. As indicated, we'll send out copies of the presentation, and there'll also be a feedback survey coming out, which we would really appreciate your contribution to, and that will support us developing future webinars that we are running. So with no further ado, I'll close the webinar and thank everyone again for their attendance. Many thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Good luck with your business.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.